So it's been over 9 months and almost 4,000 laps of driving since my first ever 500 lap video, and I think it's about time we run it back on the exact same track. In the F123 version of driving 500 laps around the Yas Marina circuit, I was only able to get into the top 25% in the world. So in this video, I want to show you how much progress that I've been making on the F1 game. So over the next 500 laps, I'm going to try and set a lap time in the top 5% in the world. So unsurprisingly, my first lap was a bit of a mess, and we're going to go through it very quickly. By the way, if you're new to this channel, you may not know that I record these 500 lap challenges over 2 weeks. So for about half of this video, I was also driving the level 1000 F1 World Car for this video, which you can see here, and during this time, this definitely held me back because of how differently I had to drive the two cars. However, that would not be an excuse when we get to around those final 200 laps of this challenge, and I have to try and set that perfect lap, which I'm always aiming for in these videos to show you lot the progress that I've made. Anyway, that's enough of my waffle. As you just saw, my first lap put me into the top 84% in the world, and obviously I'm not going to waste your time, so we're going to go through this first stint very quickly. And in the next 50 laps, I made 5 more bits of progress, which eventually put me into the top 64% in the world, which for a first stint isn't too bad. Anyway, here's my 50th lap of this 500 lap challenge, and now it's time to get into the improvements where every millisecond counts. So my first improvement between laps 50 and 100 will be on lap 66. Coming into turn 12, I was the 10th down, and I knew that there was time to find. Through turn 12, nothing changed. However, I tried to set myself up for what could have been a really nice run through the double left-hander of turn 13 and 14, which I probably could have gained another few tenths from if I didn't lose it on the exit of turn 14. Next was the penultimate corner, which brought me back to equal to my delta, so I knew that if I wanted to make any progress on this lap, I had to nail the final corner, and luckily for me, that's exactly what I did. I managed to gain a full 10th going through the final corner. I was up into the top 62% in the world, and I knew exactly where the time was to find. And only 12 laps later, I was coming into turn 9 and 10th down. Through this corner, I ran really deep, which initially lost me time, but on the exit, I gained loads of time back by having way higher exit speed. And so coming into turn 12, I was 2 tenths up. Through this corner, I had a very average run, but of course, I was focused on the exit of turn 14 because that was where the time was to find. Thankfully, I took this corner pretty much perfectly, and as you can see by the delta, this made a massive difference. I was now 7 tenths up, and this could be huge. Sadly though, I would not maintain that 7th tenth gain from a bad entry to the final corner, and in the end, I only made 3 tenths worth of progress, but there was still over 400 laps to go, so I was not worried. And 6 of these 400 laps later, I was coming into the final corner looking to make up for this mistake. Sadly, I was already 3 tenths down before the final corner, so the improvement that I made was only minimal. But nonetheless, it was still worth 1%, and that was all the progress that I made in this second stint. Throughout this 50 laps, I gained 10% in terms of the leaderboard, which I was very happy with, and I was still very confident that I could complete the overall goal. And on lap 121 of this challenge, I would get a lot closer to the top 5% in the world. Coming into turn 1, I was already somehow a 10th up. And to be honest, I didn't even have that good of a run going through the first corner. However, through the entire first sector after this was all flat out, and I was just gaining so much time from such a good exit. And by the time we reached the end of this sector, coming into turn 5, I was just over 3 tenths up. To be honest, going through this corner, I had a pretty bad run, which meant that by the end of this back straight, I would be just under 2 tenths up. Next up was the chicane, and coming into these 2 corners, I broke really early. I absolutely nailed my line through here, which meant that I got brilliant traction, and I was now almost 6 tenths up, which thankfully I maintained until turn 12. Going through turn 12, I lost a couple of attempts, which was frustrating, but it didn't really matter because of how much time I could find again on the exit of turn 14, which is exactly what I did. I shot straight back up to 6 tenths up, and coming into the final corner, I just needed to keep the car pointing in the right direction to make any sort of progress. So as you just saw, I had a relatively poor run through the final corner, which cost me around a 10th and a half. However, I was now in the top 50% in the world. And we're going to move on to the next improvement very quickly, because coming into the final corner, I was half a tenth up, and you know how much time there was to find in there. I didn't make a mistake going through here, and I gained me another huge 2 tenths of a second. And I was now in the top 45% in the world, and once again, as I crossed the line for another 50 lap stint completed, I had improved by 10% in terms of the leaderboard, and I was just getting ever closer to the overall goal. And 18 laps into my 4th stint of 10, I was coming into the back straight chicane a 10th and a half up. Honestly, I didn't think there would be any time to find going through here, so my plan was just to maintain the green delta. However, I had an absolute blinder, and I gained by an absolute mile compared to my previous personal best. And as we speed up to turn 12, I was almost half a second up, though sadly, going through this corner, I slightly overcommitted, which cost me around a 10th and a half, which was so annoying. However, what wasn't annoying was maintaining this gain, and I was now into the top 37% in the world. And once again, we're coming into this chicane. Once again, I did not think that there was any time to find. Once again, I just wanted to maintain my gain to the delta, and finally, also once again, I was proved wrong about this, which I'm not complaining about. And I was now 2 tenths up. So, as we speed up through the rest of this lap, I would maintain this gain right until the final corner, where I had a slightly better run, which brought me to 3 tenths up, and I was now into the top 30% in the world. And I was just buzzing with this because only 9 months ago, go, this took me almost 400 laps to achieve. And with only 3 laps left in this 4th stint, I was about to make yet another crucial improvement. Going through turn 1, I had such a clean run and I got straight on the power. This would instantly gain me a 10th of a second, and as we come up to the end of this first sector, I was just over 2 tenths up. And I would maintain this gain all the way up until turn 12. Through turn 12, unfortunately, I went slightly deep. However, the gap between turn 12 and 13 is so short, so thankfully I didn't lose any time. And after this, going through turn 14, I had a super good run, and coming into the final corner, I was just going to be over 3 tenths up. But unsurprisingly, I bottled it into the final corner, which was so frustrating. On this lap, I only gained around half a tenth of a second. And because this lap was so deep into this stint, I sadly didn't make any more progress, but I was so motivated to keep improving on what would be the 5th stint of this 500 lap challenge. So by pure coincidence, once again, with 3 laps to go on this stint, I was equal to my delta coming into the final corner, and I was just so desperate to improve. Going through this final corner, I really tried to follow the world record holder's line, and this really helped me use all of the track, and I also had a very smooth exit. So this lap was borderline perfect. I gained around 6% in terms of the leaderboard, and once again, I didn't improve on this stint because of how little time I had left. So as I've just mentioned, this lap was borderline perfect. However, I was starting to get worried for 2 main reasons. So reason number 1 was that I was taking so long to get up to speed, and this was so frustrating because the previous 40 laps in my stint were just basically a waste of time. So reason number 2 is that I was at the end of filming last week's video, and in that video, as I've mentioned, I was driving a level 1000 F1 world card. This was part of the reason it was taking me so long to get up to speed. And to be honest, I was spot on about this. Between laps 250 and 300, I did not make any progress. I seem to just be invalidating in so many unnecessary places, which is so annoying because it's probably the most avoidable thing in the entire F1 game. However, because the entire point in this video is that I complete every single one of the laps that I can do, I don't have the benefit of restarting, which can become, as you can probably imagine, really frustrating. And of course, there was the occasional spin. Anyway, moving on, this is the 300th lap of this challenge, and I really wanted to just get onto the next stint, and the good news was that every lap after this would not be mixed with me driving the F1 World Car. And this next stint started absolutely fantastically. Coming into the final corner, I was almost 2 tenths up. However, I didn't have that good of a run and lost about a tenth, but honestly, I didn't even care. In only 8 laps, I'd made up for the mistakes that I made on the last stint, and I had made even more progress, and I was now more motivated than ever to complete this challenge. And almost halfway through this stint, I was coming up to the back straight chicane equal to my delta. As always, I brake a little bit early into the chicane because it gives me better rotation, and these 2 corners are honestly my favourite on this track because of how often I seem to be improving through here. And on the exit, I was up to a quarter of a second positive to the delta, which you're going to see as we speed up to the penultimate corner. I would maintain this gain until here. So on the exit of turn 14, I actually gained a little bit of time, so that's very nice, and I also knew that there was about a tenth to find still in this final corner. And for once, I actually nailed this corner. On this lap, I gained just over 4 tenths of a second, and I was now into the top 11% in the world. I actually didn't make any more improvements on this stint, but to be honest, I wasn't too bothered because I still had another 150 laps left to go. I got out of the rut on my previous stint, and I only had to gain 6% in terms of the leaderboard. Obviously, this isn't going to be easy, but it is very doable. And 21 laps into the next stint, I was 200ths of a second down coming into turn 9. However, this time going through this corner, I took a much tighter line, which to be honest, I didn't think would actually work, but it did, and coming into turn 12, I was now a tenth up. Through turn 12, I gained another tenth of a second. However, sadly, I missed the apex of 13, but I made up for this on the exit the next corner, and leading up to the final braking turn on this track, I was 1.5 tenths up. Through the last corner, fortunately for me, nothing changed, although I didn't exactly have a perfect run, so there's definitely time to find in there. Anyway, I was now into the top 9% in the world. And as I thought, there was time to find in this final turn, as 8 laps later, I was coming into it equal to my delta. Through the last corner, once again, I missed the apex. However, somehow I gained another 600ths of a second, and I had improved by another crucial 1% in terms of the leaderboard. And that was the end of my final stint. I now had 100 laps to try and get into the top 5% in the world. And on lap 418, I didn't know that I was about to set an unreal lap. Through turn 1, I had an almost perfect run, and I instantly became half a tenth up to my delta. Unsurprisingly, because the next few corners were all flat out, I maintained this gain all the way until the end of the first sector. Next up was turn 5, and I had brilliant rotation and traction in 4th gear, which meant that I gained even more time. And as we speed up to the end of this back straight, I was now over a tenth up, which at this point in the challenge is huge. Coming into these 2 corners, I just wanted to maintain this progress. However, unfortunately, I lost about half a tenth through here because I missed the apex of the first corner. This was frustrating, but by the time we reached turn 12, I would still be positive to the delta. Now it's time for what, in my opinion, is the hardest section of corners in this entire track. However, between turn 12 and 14, I probably had the best run through here that I had in the entire challenge. And by the time I got to the final corner, I would be 2 tenths up, but so frustratingly, going through this final corner, I was just way too eager on the power, and this cost me a valuable half a tenth of a second. And to be honest, this mistake was probably the reason why I didn't complete the challenge on this lap. And I now only had 82 laps to set a lap time that would probably be one of the best I've ever set on this game, and every corner needed to be absolutely perfect.
When she was just a girl, she expected the world. expected the world, but it flew away from her reach, and the bullets catching teeth. Life goes on, it gets so heavy, the wheel breaks the butterfly, every tear a waterfall. In the night, the stormy night, she closed her eyes. In the night, the stormy night, away she flies. And dream of
I had done it. After 438 laps of driving around the Yas Marina circuit, I set a lap time that was good enough for the top 5% in the world. And honestly, I was so close to bottling it in that final corner, but I had done it. Here's the 450th and 500th lap of this challenge, and thank you all so much for watching. And please subscribe, because I'm so close to 15,000 subscribers, and as you can probably imagine, these videos take so long to create.